Then they came to a place opposite Jericho, with Jesus leading the way. He told them, "We are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be betrayed. They will turn him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him and flog him and kill him." I really like the Gospel of Mark. Not that I don't like the others. Matthew is more intricate and longer and gives a fascinating insight into an Orthodox Jew's view of Jesus. Luke is the only book in the Bible written by a non-Jew. It's very professional, and he's a consummate historian. John, written later, is more interpretive and really written by a poet and a seer. But Mark has a snappy, no-nonsense narrative style. He's really like a journeyman, someone who works with his hands, very understandable. Now, Mark telescopes the events of Jesus' life so that it appears that he only had 1 year of ministry and only one trip up to Jerusalem. Of course, we know he had more. But this enables Mark to give a concise, dramatic account, and I really like it. Now, when we come to chapter 10, verse 32, we reach a major turning point. It's like the fulcrum of the whole book. We've seen that up to now, Jesus has spent his whole ministry up in Galilee. We saw his 15 journeys that he made in those chapters, none of them further south than Nazareth. It was, in a way, a very sunny part of Jesus' ministry, full of healings and miracles. But in 10 verse 32, he takes a 16th journey, and it's a different one. And it's a journey south, and a long way south, deep into the Jordan Valley, the route normally taken by Jews to get to Jerusalem. And then he comes to a spot just across from Jericho. Now, Jericho is the lowest town on earth. And here, for the third time, he talks about his death. Not a difficult place to talk about death, the lowest spot on the planet, in a valley named after a sea called Dead. We saw that Jesus spoke 3 times about his death in the book of Mark. One in the far north in Caesarea Philippi, one on Galilee at Bethsaida, and now right down in the south, much closer to Jerusalem. And this time, you sense that it's much more real and graphic to Jesus. It's like his death is looming over him. And that's a good word, because when you look from the east toward Jericho, you see the mountains of Judea looming over the background. Now, Jericho is only 25 kilometers from Jerusalem, as the crow flies. 45 kilometers if you're forced to take the tortuous paths and track through the mountains. And in those 25 kilometers, the altitude rises by 3,500 feet. Jesus has a mountain to climb. And then he has a mountain to climb. What a thing for a man so young to know where, when, and how he will be put to death. He knows that he will be mocked and spat on and flogged, and then the ultimate indignity to a Jew to be handed over to Gentiles to be put to death. And those Gentiles could only have been the Romans, and when it came to method of execution, they had only one. Everything in him must have revolted against this. Every fiber of his being must have urged him to run away, and yet Jesus leads the way. And so in chapter 10, verse 32, the whole story turns, not just geographically, but also in tone. It becomes far more combative, far more threatening, far more dangerous. But it's still the same Jesus. He still has the same Galilean compassion. In fact, when he crosses over Jordan, he enters Jericho and sees a blind man. And while everyone else is telling him to get away, Jesus compassionately notices him. Now, I have a particular affinity for that blind man at Jericho, because the first time I went down to Jericho, I'd had a bad cold. Actually, I'd spent the whole of the previous day in my hotel room in Jerusalem. And then we got on the bus and made that 3,500-foot descent to 1,000 feet below sea level. And the pressure of the atmosphere just blocked into my sinuses, blocked my eustachian tubes. And I became the deaf man of Jericho. So I've got an affinity for the blind one. and Jesus heals him. That is the last healing that Mark records in his gospel. And so it's the same compassionate Jesus. But there's a steel in his eye. There's a purpose in his step. As if he goes up to Jerusalem determined to do whatever it takes to save you and me from sin and death and hell. I don't know if Jesus rode a donkey or walked, but I am reminded of the old hymn, ride on in majesty, in lowly pomp, ride on to die. Bow your meek head to mortal pain, then take, O Christ, your power and reign.